2, 1. Hello, welcome to Catching Up with Jacob. We welcome everybody here from around the world, despite whatever time zone you're in. And we're live. Jacob is in Dublin today. He's wore out from the lessons and travel, so we probably will not be taking questions today, but we will return to that format next week. Okay. Welcome to Catching Up, Jacob. It's good to catch up with you, brother. So, some interesting news within the so-called church. We have churches now apologizing to the LGBTQ community for all the things that they've done to them. So, got any insight on that and some comments?
At the very moment, I have since yesterday been in one of the most traditionally Roman Catholic countries in the world, which is the Republic of Ireland. Catholicism is very much bound up with Irish national identity and ethnic identity against Britain because of the history and so forth, which lingers to this day because of the conflicts that have existed in Northern Ireland. So Roman Catholicism and Irish identity have been very cemented. For that reason, it's an extremely Catholic country traditionally. Now, there are other countries that are extremely Catholic. It would appear Spain, Portugal, Italy, and also Austria. I'm speaking now of Europe, but Ireland is definitely one of the top 5 most Roman Catholic countries in the world. There are others, Latin America, French-speaking Africa, but Ireland's got to be in one of the top 5. And the Roman Catholic Church has lost its credibility with the younger generation in Ireland across the board. And we see why. Other than the scandals having been disclosed, finding 800 dead babies in convent courtyards and things like this, 800. The Magdalene sisters, one scandal after another, every bishop in Ireland having been caught. Well, Ireland is one of the worst examples, but it's France, United States, Australia. It's the same story internationally with the Roman Church. But let's just look this very week and last week. A Roman Catholic Archbishop in San Francisco excommunicated Nancy Pelosi, told her she cannot take the Roman Catholic communion because of her position advocating for non-therapeutic abortion. Another bishop in Los Angeles disagreed, and there was going to be a promotion to a cardinal. Guess which one got the promotion? Not the one who opposed Pelosi, but the one who was okay with it. When these cardinals were being consecrated in the Vatican, Pelosi flew to the ceremony in the Vatican. And she takes communion in the Vatican after having been discommunicated, showing that the Pope is allowed or permitted her to do it. That excommunication means nothing. So if you have one more conservative bishop trying to uphold the official Roman Catholic position, she'll just go over his head to the Vatican, who won't hold it up. This is how absurd it's become. This is how discredited the Catholic Church is under the present Pope, particularly, but his predecessors did not fare much better. Well, let's move on. Absurdity of absurdities, Lexington, Kentucky in the United States. To close the Rainbow Month, or whatever they call it, the Gay Pride Month, the Homosexual Pride Month. Now, first of all, that issue. How come there's no heterosexual Pride Month? There's more heterosexuals than homosexuals. How come all of these corporations and stores and shopping malls have to promote, and schools have to promote this gay pride? Why not promote heterosexual pride? Of the majority. This is just shows you how sick and perverted society at large has become with the woke agenda. But then the Roman Catholic Church, to close the Pride Month in Lexington, Kentucky, which is known for breeding racehorses in the bluegrass region of Kentucky. That's what it's famous for. A Roman Catholic Church is going to have a ceremony in order to apologize to the homosexual community and make atonement for the way they were treated. They're going to have a religious ceremony in a Roman Catholic Church centered on being in a state of apology to homosexuals, lesbians, etc., and to somehow make a religious atonement for the way they have been rejected in the past. And they're putting up banners, Catholic is gay and all, plus gay. Now, here in Ireland, and I'm just being honest, the Roman Catholic Church never could have cracked down on homosexuality anyway, despite its official position. Because if it did, it wouldn't have had enough priests or enough nuns. The homosexuality and lesbianism in Ireland, and then it's in other countries too, but I'm in Ireland at the moment, the homosexuality and lesbianism among Roman Catholic clergy has been phenomenal. But with it has been pedophilia and widespread child molesting and child abuse. Widespread. The Roman Catholic Church always suppressed these things, hid it. They can't hide it anymore, and now it's completely out of the closet. People see this hypocrisy. People know what's happening. They're not that stupid as the church wants them to believe. It's lost its grip in Ireland. It's lost its grip in Spain. It's lost its grip throughout Latin America and in Portugal, and certainly in northern Italy, at least in the north of Italy. It does not have the kind of grip it once had. It certainly has lost its grip in Austria and in Bavaria and southern Germany. It's just not a respected institution anymore. When you see they're apologizing to people who they, on one hand, say have sinned and have done something that is morally unacceptable, even abominable in their theology, and now they're going to apologize to them for having said it was wrong, even though it's still their official position that it is wrong, and then make atonement. I'd like to know when they're going to make atonement for the generations of children who they molested for decades and decades and decades. No atonement for them. Well, you know, there's no atonement for the Catholic Church. It's condemned by Christ.
Well, Jacob, you know, the Protestant church isn't too far behind them. I mean,
No,
the
it is
sin's
not.
coming
No,
out
it is not.
everywhere. We're now seeing there was, even within the Southern Baptists, pastors have abused the flock and hid it, and other denominations. And so this is creating a recent poll says that the amount of interest in God and religion is just dropping quickly, you know. And so where does this end up with the lack of God everywhere?
What we're seeing, of course, in Europe is completely post-Christian neo-pagan. Now in the United States, J.D. Greer, president of the Baptist Convention, signed its death warrant with his promotion of homosexual rights within the Baptist Union. Okay, so and they were the biggest so-called evangelical denomination in America, and they've been spiritually and morally destroyed by Greer and those who failed to stand up to him. Okay, so you're right. It's not just the Catholic Church. It is not just liberal Protestantism, the World Council of Churches. Now it is so-called evangelical Protestantism. In the UK, as we speak, in Great Britain, they are coming to the point in their debate or their discussion, it's not even a debate, that they're going to okay homosexual and lesbian clergy in the Baptist Union. these are people who claim to be born again. This is how far it has gone. There is no stopping it. These false religions and these false Christianities, including much of so-called evangelicism, will form into some kind of a Babylonian union in fulfillment of the prophecies of Revelation 17 and 18.
Yeah.
Faithful Bible expositors have been saying this for many decades, and they're correct.
The lack of the lack of obeying the law and creating lawlessness within the church is certainly being reflected within the lack of obeying the law within our politics, within our government. We're seeing complete lawlessness. The laws are passed, and then certain parties say, we will not obey. We're not going to do that. We're going to oppress. We're going to go around it. We're going to sue. We're going to assassinate you. This is, the salt has lost its taste.
Again, when the salt loses its taste, when the body of Christ stops being salt and light, what do you expect from secular society or secular politicians? The FBI has gone into political thuggery. It has gone from being a right-center government agency from the tradition of J. Edgar Hoover, which was also corrupt, but now it is left-center, sending 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning 20 FBI agents with flak jackets and automatic weapons to arrest people for alleged political crimes who are no threat to anybody. But ignoring people like Hillary Clinton, who should be indicted, who should be, or Loretta Young. I'm sorry, yes, Loretta Lynch.
Yeah.
Yes. Why aren't these people brought to accounts? Why have Clapper and people like him not been indicted? Why has John Brennan not been indicted? Why are Comey and McCabe not indicted? Why is Lisa Page not indicted? Why is Strzok not indicted? These people should be indicted. But the FBI will only be sent by Garland to go after the political enemies of the Democratic Party establishment, not after criminals based on the evidence, irrespective of political position. You have a political police force.
Yep.
You don't have an FBI, you have a political police force.
Yep. And on top of this, we're seeing that the Democratic Party is working with further lawlessness by charging over 600 federal agencies to expand citizens' opportunities to register to vote, to obtain and participate in the election process. The agencies are doing this. They politicize elections, trying to steal them from the authority of the states.
Absolutely, they've been trying to do that. Some states were already doing that on their own initiative. California had massive voter registration drives, like for renewing driver's licenses and things, and illegal aliens would have no problem almost being able to register to vote in California. If you've been to the motor vehicles division in California, I once had a California license when I was technically resident there, you see that they were registering anybody with no questions asked. Well, that is part of the reason you have such an open door policy for illegal immigration, because they want to save the Democratic Party from decline, and it is why you see the attempted federalization of congressional elections.
Yep, Biden started that in mid-21, and they're hoping to stave off a loss in the midterms here. They're going to do whatever it takes. And, and to continue with Biden, he's found a big boogeyman to blame his problems on. Putin is the problem for the high prices. He's the problem for the food shortage. He's now the one to blame for everything in the world's troubles.
Who is funding Putin? Why is Putin not in trouble economically despite the sanctions? It is not just because of his trade with China. It is because Biden stopped the United States from being energy independent. which drove up the cost of oil and petroleum to the benefit of Putin, Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia, people who don't like us. Instead of giving the money to Texas and to Oklahoma and to the Dakotas and giving lower prices of $2 a gallon to American people, he wants American people to pay $5 a gallon. He wants to strangle Texas, Oklahoma, the Dakotas to benefit Putin and Venezuela. That's what he's actually doing. It is that corrupt.
Yeah, that corrupt. You know, we have, it would seem like the smart thing to do would be continue to use oil and the profits from it and to increase green energy so that we always have enough power, but they're just killing one while the green energy is not ready. So the people are going to suffer in winter and all these places.
You know, we drove the price of bread products and grain up with ethanol and corn, which indirectly affected the price of meat. Ethanol has not worked. It is basically a failed policy. It has not worked. When you have these kind of diesel prices going up, what the tractors run on? Thin air? You're never going to have electric tractors in the next 25 years that are going to be able to perform at the level they need to. There is this stupid idea that only stupid people would believe, but politicians are propagating that electricity comes out of a wall. Get everybody driving an electric vehicle, which most people can't afford, not telling you where the energy has to come from. It still has to come from coal, or you have to go nuclear. You can only get a certain amount from hydroelectric and forget about these renewables. Germany is a failed experiment in renewables. Energy prices went up in Germany because and so did air pollution. So did electricity generating air pollution. Because of their attempt to go to 100% renewables, they reached about 85% renewables in most of Germany, but the prices went up and so did the pollution. They have a failed experiment. Now you have another man who's either a complete liar or a complete moron in Australia, this Anthony Albanese. The man is out of his mind. Australia was an exporter of coal and fossil fuels. So there's no reason for Australia to have blackouts and to have heat shortages. But Eastern Australia, where most of the population is, are now experiencing power failures, blackouts, energy shortages, and inability to heat homes adequately. Why is this happening in Australia when it has so much resource? He said this is happening because Australia has not developed renewables. This is ridiculous. Again, look at Germany, the biggest experiment. It's not an unknown quantity. It's been tried and it does not work. Now, I'm not saying there's not a place for renewables as a supplemental source in some cases, but to think it can ever be a primary source, anyone who says that is either a liar or an idiot. Or if they're if they're a Democratic Party politician, they're probably both.
Yeah. While I don't like Michael Moore, he did a film with another gentleman on green energy, and he went through, and they were concerned about, does this work? And every project, biomass, windmills, solar, they went through and looked at all of them, and they saw whole big giant projects are nothing but dust on the ground now. The biomass just is raping the earth, cutting trees. And they came to the conclusion that renewables will not work. One, because it costs twice as much to put it into effect, and you use twice as much of the Earth's resources as just using regular fossil fuels. Plus, we now have massive amounts of natural gas, which our ex-President Obama is putting extra tanks in his house, so kind of a hypocrite thing. I thought he would throw up a windmill or solar panels, but no, he's going with natural gas. So, and Europe has put themselves into a big problem because of the boycotting of Russian gas and things. So we just become stupid to screw ourselves in these situations around the world? Has the West just become idiots?
If there's a globalist agenda, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, if they're trying to crash the system, that is the only way you can make logical sense out of what they're doing. But in terms of pure economic reality, and in terms of pure energy production and scientific reality, it would have to be an idiot. It would have to be pure idiocy to think any of this stuff could possibly amount to anything. The only reason France has not had the problems in Germany is because France has 70% nuclear electricity generation. 70% is nuclear. That's the only reason. Michael Moore, for once in his life, and I'm like you, I don't like him. For once in his life, he told the truth. You have these solar panels. Where are they made? China. It's simply benefiting Chinese industry. Well, what else is happening? Remember, Obama gave federal subsidies to a company? That was a scam. The solar energy company was a scam, and its executives were paid bonuses after getting these government grants and contracts from Obama. They were paid bonuses, and then they all made contributions to the Democratic Party. It's just completely corrupt. It's completely corrupt. They're intentionally benefiting China. They're intentionally putting a dagger into the back of the American consumer. And it's phenomenal that there's still people who are stupid enough to vote for them and not see what they're doing.
Yep. And the cost of running electric cars, everyone's touting them how you can save on a 500-mile trip, versus gas, you can save, like $30. But they don't tell you you're going to have to wait 45 minutes to an hour to charge your car, just sitting in it, waiting on it charging. And so you're going to have that inconvenience. But as we're creating a smart grid, when the grid gets put under extreme pressure, they're going to tell people you can't turn your air conditioner on. You can't charge your car till 3 a.m, so you're stuck. But
yes,
people are not seeing this, and they don't want to see it. And plus, the average electrical vehicle just went up $6,000 more on average.
Yes.
Trucks, $150,000, $110,000 for a truck. When you can get a really nice gas one for $40,000 is a lot of gas.
Yes.
And you don't have to, so we're just making ourselves stupid.
The idea that they can transition to something that doesn't work, that's the philosophy of the liberal politicians and the Democratic Party. We need to transition to something that proven not to work. Renewable energy in Germany was proven not to work. Therefore, we must transition to it. Yeah. Here in Great Britain, I'm in Ireland at the moment, but Great Britain, 25% of the people cancer diagnosed cannot see an oncologist in the first 62 days. In Scotland, you got a 38% better chance of surviving cancer in the United States than you do in Britain. Now, I realize the United States has tremendous problems with its healthcare system because of the cost. But the transition to something that doesn't work, that's what they want to do. They want to transition, telling people something's going to work when it didn't. Well, Obamacare was a miserable failure. It didn't work, and they knew it wasn't going to work. Obama lied through his teeth to the American people over 30 times, saying you can keep your health plan if you like it. That man lied pathologically to stupid people who believed him. And he said average family's cost is not going to go above $2,500. This is completely false. Arizona's cost went up 117%. There's not a state that the cost did not go up at least 40%. And it was already very high. Now it's gone up another 40% under Obama. Most states went up at least 60%. Yep. Arizona, 117%. This is what he did. This is what he did. And there are people who are stupid enough to vote for people like that.
Again and again and again, they do the same voting. You know, I hate to mention Michael Moore, but people should watch that Planet of the Humans, because at the end of the day, both filmmakers, Michael Moore, realized they came to this conclusion that green energy will not work, and the only way what we can do to save this planet is for us to kill ourselves off. Yeah. So since we're talking on politics a little bit, you've got the Mr. Anthony Dunn. We started in on Biden, but Biden, let's see, we talked about the already of his high prices, blaming them. But how about the elections in Israel? You want to talk about that?
Those are coming up on the 1st of November. They are unprecedented for Israel. It's the kind of thing you normally would have seen in times past, or even times present in Italy, where there's no political stability, there's no government that can last. This will be the 5th election in 3.5 years. 5th election in 3.5 years in a parliamentary system. Can you imagine the equivalent in a presidential system? There were 5 general elections for president within 3.5 years. This is political instability. The only thing Israel does have going for it is that no matter which party gets in, the military is still going to have to be maintained and sustained because of national survival. That is the only thing that gives it a stability, is the military. Now, simply because they're always under threat. But the rest of it is completely unstable. It will be interesting to see what is going to happen and if it can result in someone like Mr. Netanyahu coming back to power. But if he does, it'll be the same old mess again. You have to make a league with the religious parties and give them a disproportional amount of control and money and power in order to get them in the coalition. Proportional representation is the most undemocratic form of democracy. It's created ridiculous situations in any country that had it, including Germany, where you had Green Party foreign ministers with right-center governments. It's absurd. Well, Israel is the same. They've had left-wing coalition partners with a right-wing government. Of course, it was going to fail and break down. And the alternative to that is the religious parties. It is a unworkable system. But these small parties who can engage in political blackmail, but particularly the religious parties, we call Adatiot Amaflagot Adatiot in Israel. It's their vested interest not to change the election laws or not to have a constitution. It's their vested interest to maintain the status quo because it guarantees them getting back into power no matter what happens.
Well, Jacob, let's continue with Biden, but now focused on Israel. Under Biden's watch, Iran's sanctions are violated with impunity. They're getting away with everything they want to create a bomb. And then also there's other problems, what's Biden's plan B going to do once they get the bombs? And it seems that Biden thinks that all the Arabs are the same, that Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Iran are all the same. But how does a man that doesn't understand these differences going to be able to protect us, or does he even want to protect us?
It's not only that, but the people around him, like Blinken and Austin, are just as ignorant as he is. And then you've got that serial liar, Susan Rice, who was Obama's middle woman. She's the liaison between Obama and Biden. Obama is pulling more of the strings. Biden is not doing anything. He's too senile and too weak, too out of touch. Klain and Susan Rice are linked with Obama, and they're telling Biden what to do. So you're dealing with an Obama administration, first of all. Now, what did Obama do? He made all these concessions to Iran. Well, what's he doing now? The same thing. The stupidity of having to have had Russia as your broker in the Vienna negotiations when Putin had invaded the Ukraine, that was outrageous enough. But now the Vienna negotiations have gone. So the Biden administration has opened new negotiations in Qatar with Iran, okay? Now, Qatar is a country that plays both sides, Sunni and Shia, Iran and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, okay? Qatar has no friends, only opportunities, okay? There he is. And what's he saying now? He's willing to remove sanctions that have been on Iran for years, but he's also willing to delist the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, the ones who seized the U.S. Embassy, among other crimes, and have killed Americans. He's willing to delist them as a terrorist organization. And he's already allowing former members of the Revolutionary Guard, and they're really not former members, they just say they are, to have visas to enter the United States. This is a politics of betrayal. I don't know how else to define it. And the left-wing media lets him get away with it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask something, Jacob. Iran went into Syria and started causing all sorts of troubles, and they wanted Hezbollah to bring these troubles. And it seems like Bashar Assad resorted to the IRG of the Iran to defend what remained of his regime. And now Iran seems to be calling some shots there, you know.
Of course. Well, they always would, because the Assad regime is Alawite. Alawite is a sect of Shia. They're not Sunni. So in the political thinking of the Middle East, religion cannot be overlooked. It's not just economics or strategic interests, it's religion. And Alawite are a sect of Shia. And Iran is, of course, Shia, as opposed to the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, which are Sunni. That's one factor. But the other factor is Russia. Russia came to the support and rescue, virtually, of Assad. What happened? Well, what did Putin do in Chechnya? Just target civilian populations and kill as many civilians as possible. Don't worry about winning the war, just kill all the people, kill the civilians, and demoralize them. What he's doing in the Ukraine is what he did in Chechnya, but that's also what he did in Syria. Look at the hand of Putin in Syria. Now, this happened, why? Because Obama drew a red line in the sand about chemical or biological weapons and said, don't cross it. And they crossed it, and Obama did nothing. They saw this weakness in America. Now they see this weakness again by Obama's surrogate, Biden, who's senile on top of it, who gave $83 billion going away present in military hardware to the Taliban in Afghanistan, abandoned Americans, abandoned our allies in the middle of the night and told nobody. A madman, a madman.
Yep. But we're also seeing right north of Israel, Jacob, Hamas and Hezbollah are meeting, probably at the behest of Iran and the weakness of Biden, to cause problems. And what will be the outcome of that if they
One
get
of the
together?
things the Israelis have always been concerned with in the last 10 years is a coordinated attack in the south from Gaza by Hamas, with Hezbollah attacking Galilee from Lebanon. There are 200,000 rockets, better than Katyushas. Many of them are better than Katyushas in southern Lebanon, pointed at Israel. 200,000. When the Israelis respond, if this happens, and it will, there will be a bloodbath. There will be an absolute bloodbath.
Yep. But we've got even more problems. Okay, Biden's going to go over to kowtow to Saudi Arabia here sometime in mid-July. But Iran, from what reports are saying, is they're trying to work together to sabotage this visit, and he's going to, while he may want to try to advance Israel-Saudi relations, it's and by brokering a military alliance between them, but there's going to be problems there, aren't there, Jacob?
Military cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Israel was Trump's baby, not Biden's, not Obama's. So therefore, does he really want it? Or to what degree does he want it, or how can he manipulate it? It wasn't his baby to begin with. It was Trump's, and he knows that. That's part of his dilemma politically. Look, if you want to know his attitude towards Israel, it's the same as Obama. Obama was the first American president to out and out betray Israel. With the UNESCO vote, he was the first American president to try to organize political opposition to Israel in the UN. That was Obama. And if that's what Obama did, via Rice and via Klain, that is what Biden will do. Now remember, it's mainly evangelical Christians, and certain ones of those, the premillennial ones, who are Israel's real friends in America. The traditional Democratic Party Jewish American voters and the people they have, like Schumer and Feinstein and Blumenthal, they're in the Democratic Party with the Squad. They're in the same party with Tlaib and with Olmert and with the enemies of Israel and with Alexander Ortega-Cortez. They're in the same party with the enemies of Israel. They have no loyalty. Their Jewish identity is purely American. They have no loyalty to Israel. Maybe lip service, but no real loyalty. They're in bed with Israel's enemies. This is a great betrayal. It goes back to the situation you had with the Maccabees and Menelaus, where you had Jewish collaborators with the Seleucid Greeks. Well, that's what you have now with people like Schumer and people like Feinstein. They're in the same party with Israel's sworn enemies. And people like Klain, who's Jewish, and Axelrod. They'll make concessions that will hurt Israel.
Yeah, it seems like the leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah, they're playing chess with a guy like Biden that doesn't even know checkers. But anyway, these guys are saying things like normalization with Israel is actually a crime because it harms Palestine and the Arabs. And he said, by attempting to integrate Zionist entities into these alliances, these targets, the Palestine people need to have a depth of unity here, and that these two leaders are seeking to use, like Lebanon, not only against Israel, but also for intimidating Saudi Arabia and other areas into like avoiding an alliance with Israel.
Well, you have to understand it in light, first of all, of the Hutu conflict in Yemen next to Saudi Arabia, which has affected Saudi Arabia, even attacks inside Saudi Arabia. Okay, the Hutu conflict is, of course, funded and armed by Iran. What Iran wants to do is turn Shia Gaza and anywhere else it can into turn Sunni Gaza into something Shia. The Lebanese Muslims, the Hezbollah, are already Shia. They're already Shia. The Alawites are a branch of Shia. What they want to do is see the so-called Palestinians so alienated by the Sunni powers, the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. They've left us, they've gotten in bed with the Zionists, that they will turn from Sunni to Shia. You understand?
Yeah.
And they will turn to Iran, become an outpost of Iran. That is the strategic thinking.
Well, without a question, Tehran is getting more influence in the Middle East. They're manipulating, they're pulling the strings of everyone. Their strength is growing, and I don't think anybody has a plan B for what's going to happen there. So
they're doing what China's doing. They're doing what North Korea is doing. They're doing what Venezuela is doing. They see a weak leader and an opportunity. They see an administration that is weak, both weak and corrupt. And it's an opportunity to them.
Yeah. So, and can you comment a little bit more on the elections in Israel? Is this a profound weakness in the Israeli state because they don't have leadership that has a vision for what's going to happen and what's coming, etc.?
I will tell you, in the longer term, and I don't know how much longer, it may be medium to long term, but in the longer term, what you see now, this kind of instability, is creating a leadership vacuum in Israel that will be filled by the Antichrist. He'll emerge as a messianic figure, and having rejected the true Messiah, Yeshua, they'll follow a false one. And this kind of political instability you see in Israel is creating a leadership vacuum that the Antichrist will in some way attempt to fill. That's what's happening spiritually. Remember, when we read Daniel and Revelation, these political events, and Zechariah, these political events are simply a reflection of what's happening in the heavenlies.
Yes. Well, do you have anything else you wanted to bring up for this week, Jacob?
Those are the essential things I wanted to talk about this week. I think that we've covered all of them, the most pressing of events. Okay. But let's understand also that there's a desperation among the American left and the media to limit the damage of the November elections. Let's understand also that the rhinos in the Democratic Republican Party who voted with, and that includes McConnell and Lindsey Graham, who voted against Second Amendment, basically against the spirit of the Second Amendment, do not equate Republican with good. You've got a bad Republican running against Stacey Campbell in Georgia. He's a bad Republican. He's a rhino. And do not think that everything that Donald Trump does is right just because he does it. Right. That Dr. Oz, who he endorsed, is not a man to be trusted. He was born in America, yet only served in the Turkish military. He did not vote in certain American elections, but voted in Turkish elections. He's on the payroll of Turkish Airlines. He's been associated with Erdogan, who is a Islamist and no friend of America, no friend of Israel. Yet Donald Trump endorsed him. Look, I liked Donald Trump. I voted for him twice, but do not think that everything he does must be right or good just because he did it. We'll be talking about this on Word for the Weekend. If possible, even the elect will be deceived. In relation to the Abrahamic Accord, so I won't go into it now. But realize the rhinos are as much a threat as the Democrats to the future of American democracy.
Yep. So Jacob, so you got a guy like Oz, who's I don't like either, but his opponent, who was a mayor in Braddock, that has done a good job, and he has already stated he wants to open the prisons and let everybody out. So what's a Christian to do when their choice is between bad and bad?
That's correct. You know, McCormick would not have been a good choice either. He's a rhino. He's a Bush Republican. Even though Mike Pompeo endorsed him, he's a rhino. You know, he's not somebody you could trust. So you now have a choice between, it's like Zelensky and Putin. You're hoping for a lesser of two evils. Okay, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. But remember, when you vote for the lesser of two evils, a lesser of two evils is an evil no less.
Yep. But are you saying that a Christian shouldn't vote when he has choices like that?
I say that prayer is more important than voting. Christians should vote. We should be good citizens, Scripture tells us. We should vote. But we need to vote very prayerfully and carefully and not be naive and make assumptions that we're voting for people who share our values. They don't. They don't.
Yeah. Wow. So, yeah, with the whole world is in trouble. If I could ask like a theological question, maybe that deals with some prophecy. So we see all these things lining up here, the Middle East conflict. We're seeing possible World War III with threats from NATO. Other countries are collapsing. China is rising to rule the world. They own all the mineral rights in Africa and working on South America now. And we've got no leaders, no strong leadership, good leadership. You know, is this just, things are just going to get tougher?
But you've got people like Hunter Biden making money by doing deals with the Chinese. That's affecting American policy. Yep. We are under God's judgment. But bear in mind, China itself is a house of cards. The world is in trouble. It's not like the West is in trouble and China's the alternative. China is unstable.
So a big event could send the world into a total chaos.
Absolutely.
With just like a lighting a picture. The World War I was lit by an assassination. The whole world went crazy. So this could happen.
That is correct.
Yeah.
See, the main thing to remember is the Antichrist must appear and be identified by the faithful believers before the return of Jesus in the terms of the rapture and resurrection. And all of these world events you see that we've been looking at are both directly and indirectly preparing the way for his coming. Let me put it to you this way. Daniel tells us God is the God of history. But for 3.5 years, the lordship of history will be given into the hands of Antichrist. Satan will demand equal time that Jesus had in his 3.5-year ministry, and he will get it. He will seek to change the laws and the times, and they'll be given into his hands for 3.5 lunar years, okay? Now, that lordship has always been God's. I'm answering you theologically now.
Yeah.
When Jesus came the first time, look at the circumstances that God had engineered. A large Jewish diaspora throughout the Roman Empire who were waiting for the Messiah. Paul would go to the synagogue first. And you had the Septuagint. You had the Hebrew scriptures in the Greek language, the lingua franca of the Roman Empire. So you have the scriptures available to everybody in the main language in the world, or at least in the Western world at that time. Okay? You had that. You had Pax Romana. There was a system of roads, and the Romans built all these roads, and they had a postal system, and they had trade routes that they copied from the Phoenicians. So you had communication and transportation on a level that had never existed before, an organized system of transportation and communication, where Paul could send epistles and things like this. All of these things were in place before Jesus came, so the gospel would spread quickly, okay? And that was the lordship of God, preparing for the coming of Jesus. If we understand Daniel correctly, exactly as God prepared for the coming of Jesus through the events of history and politics and economics, the same as the hand of God prepared those things, the hand of Satan will prepare those things for the coming of the Antichrist. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
That lordship of history. The same as God prepared the way for the coming of Christ and the spread of the gospel, Satan is preparing the way for coming of Antichrist. And you see this in the school system, you see it in mass media, you see it in social media, you see it in geopolitics, you see it in religion, you see it everywhere. It is Satan preparing the way.
Right.
Satan says to God, all right, you had your 3.5 years. Now give me mine.
Yeah. All right, Jacob. Well, you know, most all the news is bad news. What sort of good news should a Christian hold on to and look forward to encourage them and to help them keep their joy under the increasing pressure of living in this day and in this time?
Obviously, as we've always said, the blessed hope. When you see these things happening, calamities and so forth, lift up your head, your redemption draws near. We always point to the biblical example of maternal labor. You're desperate to have a baby to love. You want the baby, but there's no getting around contractions, birth pangs, okay? What'll get you through birth pangs psychologically is the fact that the baby's coming. Well, this is the man-child of Revelation 12. There'll be a rapture and a resurrection. Jesus is coming. That is what will get us through. The birth pangs are inevitable. But watch out for those people who says there's no birth pangs. Toast pops out of a toaster. Babies don't pop out of a birth canal. There's contractions. Well, that is the way it is going to be. It's not going to be a pop-out. Now, there will be a Caesarean section, a kolobo in Greek. For the sake of the elect, the time will be cut short. God will surgically intervene, as it were, with the rapture. But there's going to be trauma preceding it. And that's what we see taking shape.
Yeah.
Now, this is not to say that there cannot be interim periods of respite before that happens.
Yes.
If we pray and if we live godly lives. However, we have to understand the realities. The Lord is coming, and that is our blessed hope.
Yeah. Well, you know, I thought about my dad when he left. He would hate to see what's going on now, but I think of Isaiah 57, where the righteous man can go to his grave and rest, and it's actually a blessing because of that. And so Christians have to understand that even if we go early, it's a blessing, because blessed are those who die in the faith, for their labors are over.
Yes, you know, to live as Christ, To die is gain.
Yeah.
Only the saved can say that. The unsaved cannot say that. To die is gain. No, to them, to die is loss.
Yeah.
For us, it's gain. And that's only because of the grace of God in and through Jesus.
Jacob, I've been studying Ezekiel real deep the last few weeks, and I really have understood the wrath that fell upon Jerusalem and that is soon to fall upon the mountains and the high places and everything. And the language that is used concerning wrath. I mean, he uses it like language that goes back to the flood, that he's going to wipe them all away.
Yes.
A place where he's wiping a plate clean, which, deals with such laws that if your relative, particular in the law, your relative leads you into idolatry, you have to kill him and you have to have no leniency. This is the type, and the way that he says he's going to stomp them out. He's going to, just the wrath is so terrible. I mean, I shiver at times when I'm reading it, Jacob, and it's making me want to get even closer and closer to him. And when I always teach prophecy, I always try to remind people, like you say, it's a two-sided coin. You can read all the bad stuff, but you have to at some point turn that coin over, and you have to read all the good stuff and the promises and keep those just as much as at the forefront of your mind and deep in your heart, and to be able to get through all this in these days, because he's our only exit strategy. And the Calvary always comes on time, and Jesus will arrive on time for us, whether we go
God is usually slow but never late.
Never late. And so
let us also remember, David, that judgment begins in the house of God.
Yes.
And you see mainstream denominations being followed by evangelical movements like the Baptists, going into apostasy and lending sanction to immorality and perversion. This is apostasy. You've got the newfangled pre-tribulationists saying the apostasy of 2 Thessalonians is the rapture. It's a spatial departure. No, the apostasy is what the Southern Baptists are doing, or what the Baptist Union in Britain is doing. God has to deal with the church, and that's what he's doing. You see this week, God finally raised his hand against the wicked man, J.D. Hall. Hall was attacked as J.D. Hall is the partner of the Rose Bros. The Rose Bros are the Doreen virtue promoters who he prays in front of a statue of an uncrucified Christ, and he says salvation or forgiveness of sins comes by confessing them to him. He mocks belief in the Antichrist. He mocks belief in the number of the beast. This is Roseboro. And he's absolutely diabolical. But he's also very vulgar. He's into four-letter words: F this, go F yourself, go get F'd. That's the son, is the producer. And even fecal vulgarity. It's just disgusting stuff. These are sick people. They're evil and sick. And J.D. Hall was his counterpart. It was widely attributed to J.D. Hall that he badgered that 15-year-old kid, Bragan Canner, to kill himself. This kid killed himself under the continual harassment of J.D. Hall. Well, this week, God raised his hand against J.D. Hall, on a weapons charge while under the influence of narcotics or whatever he was under the influence of. His church, even his church, finally had to take stand against him. I thank God that God's judgment came against J.D. Hall, and I pray to God it comes against Roseboro next. These are bad people. Would you see what Bill Johnson is doing? The Holy Spirit is a blue genie. These are bad people. These are the deceivers. Am I concerned about what's happening in the political realm? Yes. Am I concerned about what's happening in Israel? Yes. Am I concerned about the stage being set for Antichrist? Yes. But the first thing we need to be concerned about is the apostasy in the church.
You know, Jacob, I often think, I just wish this was wrapped up. And I just want it wrapped up. It's just getting so burdensome. Is that a right thinking by a Christian?
The early Christians had a prayerful expression. They used it as a departing salutation when they were going to part company, or even Mar Anatha in Aramaic, Maranatha, come Lord, come Lord. They just wanted Jesus to come. Well, before he comes back, the pressure against the elect and the faithful church will be such, and the wickedness of the world will be so vexing. We're just going to say, Mar Anatha, please come, Lord.
Yes, even Jesus had said 2,000 years ago, he wished the fire was already lit.
That's
because
correct.
The outcome is going to be wonderful, isn't it, Jacob?
This is for sure. May he keep us faithful until that day.
That's right. Let us pray for strength. Let us pray for wisdom, and let's hold tight to him who saves.
Thank you. Marco will be back with us next week.
Yes.
He had family obligations in Colorado this week. I've had to come to Ireland for various reasons this week. I'll be meeting with the Irish rep of Moriel tomorrow. This is a shorter version than we normally do, but we did it this way out of pure necessity. I do think, though, it's been a worthwhile venture. I do think we address some issues that are of concern to Christians that it is edifying to have addressed and necessary to have addressed. But we will resume our normal format, Lord willing, next week with Marco when he'll be back. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. May God bless you.
Yeah, and thank you, Jacob, for everything. I think we did a lot of stuff on the Middle East that is underneath the surface that's going on. And so keep praying, everybody. He's coming. Stay faithful, and read and study his word and hide it in your heart. We will be needing it. And so,
amen.
And so till next week, we will see you all again.
God bless.
Tune in tomorrow night for Word for the Weekend.
On RTN, we will be there on RTN and Moriel TV.
Yeah, I want to thank Tim for always getting the stuff up for everybody. Jacob, he's doing that.
Tim and Davey have done a great job.
Yeah, they've done a great. They do this, and they're doing a lot of stuff, folks. So please pray for them because they work all the time behind the scenes and don't get any accolades and things like that. And they could use prayer for things going on and the problems in Australia that are weighing on the people. With Moriel reps, I didn't know. I meant to tell you, Jacob. Some of our Moriel friends are telling us that if they don't take the vaccine, their social score won't be good enough to get their checks.
Yep.
And so, if it's going there, it's coming here. May God help and strengthen all of us.
Amen.
Jesus. All right, Jacob. We'll see you again.
God bless. See you soon.
Pray for your leg. Pray for his legs, people.
Yes, please pray for my edema.